Hey kids, Flexing Teacher Weber here. I hope you're having a good day. We've finished looking at fractions to decimals and decimals to fractions. Now we're going to look at percents, and percents are closely related to fractions and decimals. I want to today start looking at what a percent looks like as a picture. So what I have right here, first of all, the simplest way to think of a percent is that it is a fraction out of 100. Percents mean out of 100. So what I have here is a hundreds grid. There's 100 little mini squares in this big square. And what I've asked you here is what percent of this grid is green? Well, there are 4 squares out of 100 that are green. So we'd start making the fraction 4 out of 100. And then 4 out of 100 is equal to 4%. That's the percent symbol. Okay, now what percent of this grid is yellow? Well, let's count the number of squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we'd say 12 out of 100, which is 12%. And then what percent of the grid is orange? Well, let's count the orange squares. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So we have 20 out of 100, or 20%. Okay, now what percent of this grid is red? Well, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. 28 out of 100 are red, or 28%. Now, all the remaining squares are purple, right? So I could go and count up all the squares, all the purple squares, or I could do this. I could add up what percents I've already used and then subtract from 100. So I've already got 28%, 20%, 12%, 4%. That adds up to 14. Carry the 1, 64. That adds up to 64%. That's all the percents that are not purple. Now to get the percent that is purple, I could take 100, since the entire grid is 100%, subtract 64, and I would get 36%. So 36% of this is purple, or I could just count up all the purple squares. So percent means out of 100. That's what a percent looks like. Now, what happens if something isn't out of 100? Like, look at this. This says, what percent of this grid is shaded red? What percent is shaded white? Well, a lot of people just say, oh, that's easy. 3% is shaded red because there's 3 squares shaded. No, it's not that easy. Percent is a fraction out of 100. Let's see how many squares there are in this picture. There's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There are 12 squares in total. And 3 of them, 1, 2, 3, are shaded red. 3 over 12, I'm going to think back to my equivalent fractions. Divide by 3, divide by 3, and I get that that is equal to 1/4. Now remember, 1/4 is one of those really special fractions, right? 1/4 we can make out of 100. by timesing by 25. And that's 25 out of 100. So what percent are shaded red? 25% of those squares are shaded red because remember, percent means out of 100. Now, the question also says what percent are shaded white? Well, all the remaining squares are shaded white. So if red is 25%, then the white has to be 100% take away the red. So there has to be 75% that are shaded white. So if a fraction isn't out of 100, to try to make it a percent, we can use an equivalent fraction and make it out of 100. Let's see what that looks like. So this question says, to write a fraction as a percent, make a fraction out of 100. So let's see what that looks like. First fraction, 7 out of 10. Okay. To make it a percent, make an equivalent out of 100. I can do that by times by 10 times by 10. That gives me 70 out of 100, and that is equal to 70%. Question 2. Ooh, look at this, mixed number. 3 and 2 over 10. Well, we'll worry about the 3 in a moment, but let's get the 2 over 10 into a percent. The 2 over 10 we can make out of 100 by timesing by 10 and times by 10. And that's 20 out of 100, and that's 20%. But now we also have the whole number 3. Now, if you eat one whole pizza, that's 100%. If you eat 2 whole pizzas, that's 200%. If you eat 3 whole pizzas, that's 300%. So think of this 3, think of it as 300%. So if we have 300% and we have 20%, then the total answer to this question is 320%. Let's take a look at number 3, 14 out of 20. Well, to make it into a percent, make it a fraction out of 100. I'll do that by times by 5 to get 100 and times by 5. Well, 10 times 5 is 50, 4 times 5 is 20. That's 70 out of 100. That's 70%. Okay, let's take a look at number 4. 7 and 9 over 20. Well, we'll worry about that 7 in a second. But 9 over 20 we can make out of 100. Percent means out of 100. By times by 5, times by 5. And I get 45 out of 100. That equals 45%. Now, we have the whole number 7. 1 whole equals 100%, 2 wholes equals 200%, 3 wholes equals 300%. So think of this as 700%. I have 700%, I have 45%. That's 745%. Let's look at a few more examples. Okay, 21 over 25. I can make that to a fraction out of 100 by timesing by 4. And times by 4. And I get 84 out of 100. And that is equal to 84%. Question 6. I have 2 wholes and 1 over 25. Well, let's worry about the 2 wholes later, but 25 we can make into a fraction out of 100 by times by 4, times by 4, and that's 4 out of 100. That equals 4%. Since this is a whole number, 1 whole equals 100%, 2 wholes equal 200%. And 200% plus 4% equals 200, 4%. Last 2 questions. Fractions out of 50. 13 out of 50 we can make out of 100 by times by 2 times by 2. I get 26 out of 100, and percent means out of 100, that's 26%. Last question, 3 and 41 over 50. I can make that a fraction out of 100 by timesing by 2 times by 2. That's 82 out of 100, which is 82%. And over here I have the whole number 3. Well, that's equal to 300%. 300% plus 82% is 382%. All right, so now you know that we started off here looking at what percent looks like as a picture out of 100. Then we talked about how percent can be made into a fraction out of 100. If you don't have a fraction out of 100, you can use equivalent fractions to make a fraction out of 100. And then we looked at a bunch of examples of how that works. You now have enough knowledge to do your first assignment on percents. I hope that helps. That's all for now. Flexing Teacher Weber out.